when a woman was found brutally murdered in her own home in 1982. The police had zero leads and no suspects. The case went cold. And for over 4 decades, the mystery of what happened to her remained unsolved. But now the case has been reopened after new DNA evidence linked a suspect to the crime scene, all while they were already behind bars. So, what did the DNA evidence reveal? Here's the chilling story of how a murder mystery from 40 years ago was finally solved with DNA evidence. On June 19, 1982, Pamela Clyburn was just trying to get through her day. Pamela worked at a grocery store in the city of Port Orchard in Kitsap County, Washington. She had a fairly normal life, but she did have one major problem that many Americans today can relate to. The single mother had recently gone through a divorce. It was a messy split, and she was still going back and forth with her ex-husband over custody of their 2 children. At the time, Pamela was 35 years old, and she lived in a small townhome on the 300 block of Southeast Lincoln Street with her 7-year-old daughter, Erica. Her son, Josh, was living with his father. On the morning of June, Pamela woke up and got ready for work. She dropped her daughter off at school and then headed out to work herself. It was just another normal day, but tragically, it would be the last normal day of Pamela's life. When Pamela returned home from work that evening at around 7 p.m., she was shocked to find that somebody had broken into her house. Her purse was on the floor, her jewelry box was ransacked, and drawers were pulled out from dressers and strewn about the room. It was clear that someone had been searching for something. And when Pamela realized that her phone line was also cut, she knew she had to get out of there fast. So she left the house and hurried to her neighbor's house. Pamela's neighbor was a woman named Judy, who was married to a man named Ed. The couple was watching TV when Pamela pounded on their door, frantically telling them that she had been robbed. According to Judy, Pamela was shaken but otherwise fine. She told her neighbor that she was unsure if the robber was still in the house or not. But she didn't feel safe staying there alone. So Judy invited her to stay in her home for the night. Just as the women were settling in for the evening, however, Pamela suddenly bolted outside. She told Judy that she needed to check if her car had been stolen and then ran off. Not long after, the neighbors heard what sounded like gunshots. At first, they assumed that it was fireworks. But then, when they looked outside, they saw Pamela's car speeding away from the scene. The couple quickly called the police to report the suspicious activity. The local police arrived on the scene shortly thereafter, and so did an ambulance for Pamela. But unfortunately, when emergency services arrived, Pamela was nowhere to be found. They searched the area, but there was no sign of her anywhere. The police did, however, notice that Pamela's front door was ajar, so they cautiously entered the house and made a gruesome discovery. Inside the house, they found Pamela's dead body lying on the floor. She had suffered multiple gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. As for her killer, they had vanished without a trace. In the immediate aftermath, the police interviewed Pamela's friends and family members to try and piece together what could have led to such a brutal crime. According to those close to her, Pamela had recently gotten a big insurance policy for $250,000. She had taken out a loan on her home and was struggling financially. But most importantly, she had recently gone through a nasty divorce with her ex-husband. In fact, just 3 days before Pamela was killed, she had been granted full custody of her young daughter, and her ex-husband was furious about it. He even angrily confronted her about it, saying, "You haven't seen the last of me." Could he have killed her, or was there someone else entirely responsible? With very few leads, the police focused on the only person who seemed to have a motive for wanting Pamela dead: her ex-husband, Ron Claiborne. They tracked him down and brought him in for questioning. But to their surprise, Ron actually had an airtight alibi. He was able to prove that he was out of state at the time of the murder and had several witnesses to back up his story. This meant that he couldn't have possibly committed the crime, so he was released and went on with his life. As the years passed, the case grew colder and colder. There were some minor updates every now and then. For example, in 1989, a local resident came forward and told police that they had seen a strange car parked near Pamela's home the night she was killed. The car was described as a dark blue, possibly a Ford Pinto or a Mercury Bobcat, but this lead also went nowhere. Finally, in 2019, almost 40 years after the murder, the police announced that they had finally caught a break in the case. After retesting some of the evidence collected from the crime scene, they were able to extract usable DNA from a sheet that had been at the scene. Now that they had some usable genetic material, the police put the DNA into a national database in hopes that it would match to a criminal who was already in prison, and amazingly, it was there that they got their match. The DNA matched that of a man named Dale Selby. But who was Dale, and how could he possibly be connected to this murder? Dale was a 66-year-old man who had been convicted of raping a woman at knife point in 1986. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison and was still behind bars when the police made the DNA connection. But why would a convicted rapist also be a cold-blooded murderer? Even more puzzling, how could he possibly be connected to Pamela? Dale had served his full 15-year sentence for the rape and had been released by the time Pamela was murdered. This meant that the police needed another explanation for how the two of them could be connected. After reviewing the details of the case, the police learned that Dale had a very strange habit. While he was incarcerated, Dale routinely wrote letters to random people across the country asking to marry them. Dozens of women received these bizarre marriage proposals from a man they didn't know, and astonishingly, at least one woman accepted. Before Dale was released from prison in 1988, he married a woman named Donna Manson. But less than a year later, Donna filed for divorce and revealed a shocking reason for the split. She said that she had been in an abusive relationship with a man who had forced her to marry him. That man was none other than Dale Selby. When Dale was arrested, he gave his new wife's name and address as his own, and because she had recently changed her name legally, the police were unable to track her down. As far as everyone knew, Donna had vanished off the face of the earth. But now the police knew exactly where to find her. They tracked her down and brought her in for questioning. According to Donna, she had no idea that her husband was a suspected murderer and had only married him because she wanted to help him get out of prison. But as soon as the newlyweds were on the outside, Dale revealed his true colors and became physically abusive towards her. Donna soon came to regret marrying Dale and filed for divorce. But as it turns out, she had another big regret as well. She had thrown away the letter that he had sent her when he proposed. This would have been a huge help to the police in linking Dale to the case, but sadly, it was gone forever. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the police were convinced that Dale was guilty based on the totality of the circumstances. They knew that Dale had been married under a false name and that his wife had disappeared. And what's more, she had a history of violence against women. In light of this evidence, they decided to bring him in for questioning. They questioned Dale about his history with Pamela, but he denied knowing anything about her murder. He even took a polygraph test to prove his innocence, though the results were inconclusive. Eventually, the police let Dale go since they had no hard evidence to hold him, but they never stopped believing that he was guilty. In the end, the police were never able to get a confession out of Dale, and he was never formally charged with the crime. But the DNA evidence clearly shows that he was present at the crime scene. What do you think really happened to Pamela? And do you think the police made the right call by not charging Dale? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Thank you for tuning in.